He is self-help, at least self-help me guru, right? He's a self-help for me guru. DeVon Franklin, author and just a good guy. He's done so many different things throughout his career. We're going to talk about your book, DeVon, in a second. I don't have like one thing I can say that you are, you know? Like when you go to the doctor, what do you put as occupation?
I put self-employed.
Self-employed. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the self-employed DeVon Franklin joining us today.
There we go.
So before we get to your book and the premise of it, something came up here, and it has to do with feeling guilt. So Tanya is back with her guy, Socrates. We call him on the show. We don't have his real name yet.
Oh, Socrates. Okay.
So they're back, and the other day she sends me a text, and she says, "Hey, I'm near. We're gonna have a dinner near where you live. Would you like to join us at 5 p.m.?" And unfortunately, I could not, and I felt bad. So she texted me last second, right? I text her back, DeVon, saying no, but then I carried guilt that I couldn't go. Should I have felt the guilt? And if so, why did I feel that guilt?
Because you're trying to be all things to all people.
Yeah.
And you may be putting too much value in that.
Wow.
So the guilt is, I want to be there for her. I need her to know it's not just a job for me. Like she's important, but I have commitments and I'm so concerned about that. There's the guilt.
Right.
She didn't think anything of it. It's like,
no, she didn't. She clearly didn't even think of me until they got the reservation.
So it's just, I think a lot of people, Ryan, struggle with this, right? Like wanting to be everything to all people. And at some point we just got to say, hey, you know what? Listen, it's all love. I love folks. I love her. I couldn't be there. And it means nothing more than that. But it's not a value thing. It's not a value judgment.
Well, it does dovetail in a way into the premise of your book, actually, about setting expectations for yourself and for others. And that, you say, can be a real bad way to go.
Absolutely. Because so often in our need for approval, in our need to be liked, in our need to not disappoint folks, we end up living by everybody else's expectations of us. And we never actually live our life. We're living for everybody else because we don't want anybody to be mad at us. We don't want anyone to be disappointed. We don't want anyone to say a negative word. So we're over here spinning plates, making sure everybody's happy. Everybody's happy. But guess who ain't happy? Us. Because we're overextended. We're overburdened. We're overcompromised. We are overcommitted. And then we want to know why we're stressed, why we're secretly anxious, why we're secretly depressed, because we're tapped out. Because we are not living by our own expectations.
So, DeVon, I feel like my married friends, not pointing any fingers, have said, hey, when you're in a relationship or you're getting to know someone or you're just starting out, sit down and set expectations. I feel like I've been given that advice. What are we supposed to do in that narrative?
Well, okay. So this is, the book is all about how to set expectations. And when I talk about living free, it means we are not under the physical, emotional, or mental control of anyone or anything because we set expectations. When you set an expectation, you got to ask two questions. One, is it realistic or unrealistic? How do you know? Is it in your control to do it? Two, is the expectation spoken or unspoken? Meaning it doesn't need to be communicated. Now, I think when people say, oh, sit down and set expectations, they're talking about like, oh, set an overview for your marriage. It doesn't work that way. Because a lot of times in a marriage and a relationship, what happens? We end up trying to control the person we're with. We have no control over anybody but ourselves in the remote. Why is there so much frustration in a relationship? Because I want them to do something that they may not want to do. When we talk about setting expectations, we got to say, you know what? I got to let that person be free. Now, we can communicate with the expectation is, hey, I would like to go here and I like spending time with you. Would you like to do that with me? But you got to give them the ability to say yes or no. In my opinion, too often we're putting so much of a burden on the person we're partnered with to do the things that we don't even do for ourselves. Being loving to ourselves, being supportive of ourselves. Let the tension out of the relationship by taking the expectation off. Just because they don't want to go with you somewhere doesn't mean they don't love you. I talk about this in the book. Megan and I got married and, she was cooking up a storm of one recipe, baked chicken. That's all she got. That's all she had. So I said, oh man, this is great. I'm getting this baked chicken every day. It's amazing. And then she left to go shoot a TV show for 6 months. She came back. I was expecting the baked chicken. She didn't cook it. And I'm like, what's going on? I had this unspoken expectation. Man, I got salty. I was mad after weeks of no baked chicken. And then she's like, what's wrong with you? And then I was like, nothing. Because see, here what happens. We say, well, I thought, well, if you love me, you know what's wrong with me. Not true. Just because they love you doesn't mean they know. Long story short, I finally said, why aren't you baking the chicken? And she's like, I'm serious, it's true. Because that suppression just blew up, right? So she said, listen, I could feel the weight of your expectation. And it took the joy out of it for me.
Wow.
I was initially just cooking for you because it was something I wanted to do to express my love, but then it became expected. It felt like an obligation.
Yeah. Ew.
And I said,
changes the whole premise.
It changed the whole thing.
Yeah, it changed everything. Right.
And
That makes sense. That makes sense.
I was like, yo, I just took unconditional love and made it conditional.
Mm-hmm.
I let the expectation around baked chicken make love conditional.
And she felt weight on that. I mean, that's what she really interested.
She felt the picture of it. So then I said, all right, babe, you know what? Let's take the expectation off. You cook, I cook, we order out, but no longer are we going to let what happens around our meals become an unrealistic or an unspoken expectation.
Just before we let you go, and by the way, we have the book here, DeVon Franklin, Live Free is the name of this book. And if you've seen his books in the past, you know what you're in for, and this just takes it even beyond. But DeVon, before you go, what vocabulary do you like? So let's get rid of expectations. What vocabulary do you like to use when we're thinking about this? I know live free. Free is one, but.
Sure. The vocabulary that I like is like when you take off expectation, just deal with communication, right? It's always about communication to me, because so often we have these ideas and these ideals that come from our upbringing, childhood, whatever movies we watch, whatever shows we watch, whatever music we listen to. And there's all this like secret software running, and we never communicate. Just communicate. Mm-hmm. But not communicate from a place of I'm communicating because I want you to do what I want you to do. Communicating because I just need to let go. Hey, here's what's happening to me. Here's what's going on with me. Here's how I feel. Here are my needs. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what makes me feel good. What about just getting to the place where we just express?
DeVon, I just had this crazy fantasy.
What is that?
That is when I get married. Now, it's a long way out, I think. But when I do have your number. So I could FaceTime you in these moments of real challenge and say, okay, pause. DeVon, what do we do now? We're here in this moment. No. It's not baked chicken, but it's one of those moments. I mean, I have his number.
I got you, bro.
I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. So just I'll let you know. I'll let you know when I get married. You'll know. We'll let you know about it.
Wait, there was this one thing. There's one thing that you said, DeVon, that I feel like is so good, and it was communicate and evaluate before you evacuate. Because so quickly, everybody just on to the next bigger, better thing, and it's like, no, if you communicate and evaluate before you just leave.
Yeah, because so often, you get in a relationship or even a marriage and things aren't working out the way you want, and immediately you're trying to evacuate. But whatever work you didn't do, you're going to take wherever you go. So before you evacuate any relationship, evaluate. Why do I feel this way? What's the work that I need to do? How is this relationship reflecting the areas I need to improve? Do that work before you evacuate. And you may realize once you evaluate, you don't even need to evacuate, because you realize the problem was you, not them.
Okay, Tanya, I'm calling dibs on the FaceTime, so don't take my FaceTimes up with your Socrates. Just because you're moving faster with your guy than I am with my marriage, you can't take all the FaceTimes, all right? I'm calling dibs. DeVon, love you, man. Thank you so much for coming on. Continued success and happiness.
Thank you. All right.
There it is right there. Live free. Take care, my friend. Bye-bye.